regarding the graduate diploma in immigration and citizenship law, but it's good to be back. It's good to be prepping for another admissions cycle. So for those of you who may have attended a previous webinar or those who are new, I am Don Ames. I'm the manager of admissions and recruitment for the graduate diploma in immigration and citizenship law, or GDIP ICL program for short. And we are getting ready to open up our application for January 2024. So we are looking ahead to next year already. And this webinar is to provide you with some general application information that you should be knowledgeable of prior to the opening of the application. We want all of our prospective applicants to be as prepared as possible going into the application process. And we want to make sure that you have all of the tools available, all of the resources available at your fingertips in order to make an educated decision about applying for the GDIP ICL program. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the overview. So we're going to do our land acknowledgement and other brief introductions. I'm going to go through some program overview, and then we're going to take a look at the application process and some specific tips that you should take away from today to help you better understand the application process and what is required of you as a prospective applicant. We're then going to open up the Q&A at that time. The Q&A will open later in the presentation, so please hold all questions until then. We know that you have questions. We have a ton of people who are going to be joining us today, as well as to our May 31st information session, but we want you to go through the webinar first, hear what I have to say, and then hopefully that's answered a good majority of your questions. Anything else that may be outstanding, we'll open up the Q&A later on, and then you'll be able to get some answers directly from the admissions team. Not only myself, but I've got Jolene, I've got Ilana, members of my admissions team, and Tracy Burt, the Associate Academic Director, is here with us to provide you with some answers to your burning questions. But again, ideally, everything that you may be asking or thinking about is going to be answered within this webinar. Let's go ahead and begin with our acknowledgement of territory. So Queens University is situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. I find it to be an extreme honor to be Canadian, to live on Canadian territory, to live on unceded lands, and to continually support and make awareness known of the plight of the Indigenous population of Canada. We know that there are atrocities that have occurred, that are still occurring. There are things being brought to light every single day. This is but a minor action in order to make sure that the indigeneity that Queens is really focused on is always top of mind. We do this at the beginning of all of our presentations. And if you want more information about indigeneity at Queens, I encourage you to visit the Office of Indigenous Initiatives or the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center. Lots of great information about indigeneity here at Queens, the supports that are being provided. And of course, we want to make sure that any of our Indigenous students, our faculty, staff are acknowledged, and we are supporting them every step of the way. So this is me. I am the manager of admissions and recruitment, as I've mentioned prior. I have been through quite a few cycles now of this process, the admissions process for the GDIP ICL program. So I'm really happy to share any of my expertise that I've seen from the admissions process and where previous applicants have kind of stumbled or fallen when it comes to what is required of them. I want you to be as prepared as possible going into the application process, because I know that $110, while it may seem like a small number in the grand scheme of things for the application fee, it's not a small amount of money in my mind. I want you to be utilizing that correctly and that you're applying appropriately for our program. We hate sending out rejections, or we hate having people to withdraw their application because it's incorrect, or there was an error, or there wasn't enough preparation done. This webinar is here to help you. Take it all in, utilize the resources that I'm going to provide to everybody at the end of the session, ask your questions during the Q&A section if they haven't been answered, and we're here to support you even after this presentation. So hopefully this is helpful. And again, really take away as much as you can from this, because we want you to be prepared going into the next application cycle. Before we begin, though, I've already mentioned, if you have any questions, hold them until the Q&A section. Do not ask any questions throughout the session. Again, we want you to just take in the materials first. There's no need to raise your hand. We're not going to ask anybody to unmute. We're not going to utilize that tool within this webinar. It's all going to be written questions and written responses. I'm going to do some verbalized answers if we're seeing some consistent questions come up. We're also asking people to not utilize the Q&A to provide personal information. No cell numbers, no email addresses, no any information that is directly personal to you. Questions should only be entered into the Q&A, no personal information, and only enter your questions once. We know that there's a lot of you already here. We know that you want your questions answered when we get to the Q&A section. So don't spam the Q&A with multiple questions or the same question over and over and over. We will get to as many as we can. A link to the recording of this session will be provided afterwards. We're not sure exactly what the timeline is, but watch your email addresses, watch our Facebook page as well. We tend to post a lot of our video links there. Also, final point before we begin, this is not a webinar for individuals who have applied for September 2023 entry. Maybe you're here to try and find out more information about the status of your current application. I won't be providing any details for September 2023 applications. Information on our admission decisions will be sent out in June and July for those individuals, but no other information for September 2023 applicants will be provided. So if you're here, I appreciate your interest, but there's no real vital information for you unless you're looking at a January 2024 application. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our program overview. So this is a section where I give you a little bit of general information about Queens, about the GWICL program, and kind of what to expect within and outside of the program. So the program originally started way back in the January 2021 admission cycle. Of course, it started prior to that when there was an agreement struck between Queen's University and the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, or the CICC for short. The CICC was looking for an academic partner to offer the English language program to aid in their kind of regulating of the immigration consultancy profession. Queen's was a successful bidder, having put together a fantastic proposal for a really sound educational postgraduate program to help support individuals who are looking to become immigration consultants and write the entry to practice exam with the CICC. And we've been executing this program ever since January 2021. So we are well into our understanding of how admissions works. We are going to be going into our 7th admission cycle, which is crazy to think about, but it is really exciting. And we're really proud of the program that we've put together here. We know that the academic director, Sherry Aiken, is extremely proud of the program. All of the staff really appreciate what has been designed and what's been executed within the program. We have a great number of alumni who have hugely benefited from attending. So there's lots of really great things we can talk about when it comes to this program, but that's kind of how it formed. And what the number one thing that we know our applicants are interested in is becoming regulated Canadian immigration consultants. There's much more to do with the education that you'll get out of this program, which I'll detail in a bit, but we are the only English language education pathway to become eligible for the entry to practice exam. So anybody who's interested in becoming a regulated Canadian immigration consultant must go through our program or the French language program at our partner institution, the Université de Montréal, to become eligible to write that EPE. One of the key things about our program that makes us really unique and special is that we are delivering this program entirely online. There is no need for any study permits, no in-person attendance on Queen's University's campus here in Kingston, Ontario. There's no need to even travel to Canada to take this program. Everything is offered entirely online. All of the staff with the program are remote working. Like, there is no on-campus component when it comes to the GWICL program. There is one element when it comes to the end of the program that I'll detail, but everything else conducted entirely wherever you are located. When it comes to Queen's University itself as an entity, maybe you need to know a little bit more about our post-secondary institution. We are one of the top-ranked Canadian universities. We are always seeming to be up near the top of the Maclean's rankings. when it comes to the rankings of the different universities in Canada. We're very proud of what we offer. We know that our alumni love Queens. They are Queens through and through. If you talk to any alumni of the program or of any program at Queens, you'll know that our institution is highly regarded, and it's a fantastic university to work at, to study at, and to just be around. Our program itself, though, we've already graduated over 250 graduates to date. And right now we have over 600 active students in the program. So we're seeing people come to our program, and the interest is still there. Our admission cycle is extremely competitive. So we know that people are really interested in getting into our program. Some of the things you'll be doing within the program, you'll be learning that foundational knowledge of immigration and citizenship law, ethics and professional responsibility. You'll be learning about running your own immigration practice. There's the immigration practice management studies. And you're going to be learning from world-renowned subject matter experts who are instructing all of the courses. You can find their biographies on our webpage, on our website, and they're fantastic. They're current lawyers, current regulated Canadian immigration consultants, just a lot of expertise in the field that you'll be learning from throughout the entire program. And there are different ways that you can study with the GDIP ICL. Typically, the majority of the people who are here today or who have applied for our program are looking for a standard entry into the program, either full-time or part-time. When it comes to our program, this webinar is going to be a little bit different than maybe some of the previous webinars that you've attended. Because we are looking at a January start, the winter cohorts or the January cohorts are smaller in intake, and we also don't accept part-time applications. So we only are looking at full-time applications for January starts. So while there are the two options for entry for a fall application, for winter, it's only the full-time pathway that you're looking at. Another pathway that is available for both our September and our January starts is the access pathway. The access pathway I'll go a little bit into later on in this presentation, but it is just an additional pathway that allows for those who don't meet our academic requirements to still apply for the program, utilizing their professional experience. So more on that a little bit later. We also have our inter-student progression. We have a 4 program credit and a 4 no program credit progression. 4 credit is for individuals who wish to receive university credit for the 4 courses maximum that they can study. This pathway can be utilized to enter into the program. It's a little bit trickier. The same admission requirements apply for interest students. But mostly we see interest students utilizing this for more professional development opportunities. We have CPD hours associated with all of our courses, and we see this utilized by individuals who are trying to take the credits back to some sort of professional designation, such as something like KPIC. That's a group that where you can utilize our courses for some professional upgrading and improvement. And we typically see inter-students utilize that for that reason. We don't provide a lot of information about inter-student progressions in this webinar because we do see the majority of those interested in attending these events looking at the standard entry into the program. One of the things that I always get asked, or we get asked via email, is, well, I'm applying as a part-time student or a full-time student. Will I still qualify to write the entry to practice exam? Basically, I like to say all roads lead to graduation and eligibility to write the EPE. Doesn't matter how you apply, full-time, part-time, in the 24-month or the 36-month cycle. So long as you are completing our program, all 9 courses, and you graduate from the program with the required GPA, you're going to be eligible to write the EPE. So as I've already mentioned, the January starts a little bit different. We're only going to be looking at that full-time stream, but for future intakes, if you're thinking, well, I am a part-time student, I'm interested in that part-time study, I'm going to have to apply for a future cohort. Yes, it doesn't matter if you complete it full-time or part-time, or full-time access or part-time access. So long as you complete the program, you'll become eligible to take the EPE. And to graduate and to kind of complete all of our requirements, you need to study all 9 courses within our program. Full-time students complete the program in 3 consecutive terms, or just under 12 months. Part-time students have 6 consecutive terms or 2 years or potentially 3 years to complete the program. And as mentioned, everything's done online, but the majority of the work that you're doing is done via self-directed learning opportunities. So you're doing things on your own time. Readings, online quizzes, virtual interactions, those are things that are done outside of a live classroom space. You're doing the majority of the work in this program when you're available to do the work. There are mandatory tutorials that everybody must attend with built into the program. Those are live, those are online. They're 2 hours per week per course, except for courses like ICL 810, your first course, and ICL 890, your final course. There are 3 hours worth of tutorials for each of those courses. They'll be separated kind of into their own unique ways. We will inform all students what the tutorial schedule looks like, and students get to select the tutorial dates and times that work best for them. Typically, tutorials are offered on either weeknight evenings or weekend midday. There's some structure when it comes to the ICL 810 requirements. So be on the lookout if you are a successful candidate or applicant for our program. Be on the lookout for more information about tutorials. The one thing I wanted to mention that there is available on campus, it is graduation. We actually hosted a fantastic graduation in-person celebration last October for some of our graduating class. It was great to see some people live in person, and the picture on the next slide actually demonstrates how many people showed up for that event. But you can graduate, you can convocate, walk across the stage and receive your graduate diploma, just as any other Queen's student will with this program. You don't have to, but it is an opportunity to come on campus once and for all if you do wish to convocate with the rest of the faculty of law. We get a lot of questions from individuals about what they can do with their studies, what they can do with the graduate diploma once they complete. Of course, the number one thing that we see a lot of interest in is becoming regulated Canadian immigration consultants, those individuals who want to take the entry to practice exam, who want to practice immigration law here in Canada or abroad. This is the only English language pathway. As I've mentioned, there's a French language pathway with the University de Montreal. But again, this is the way that you become an RCIC and practice immigration consultancy, either here in Canada or abroad, as I've just mentioned. We have a really great success rate when it comes to our students, our graduates taking the EPE. And again, it's that opportunity for you to become your own boss, to run your own immigration consultancy practice, or of course, you can practice with a larger immigration organization out there already doing its fantastic work. There are other things you can do and think about when it comes to our program and what to do post-graduation. We see a lot of individuals taking this into government or NGO work. We see a lot of people going into private industry. There's that kind of thought process when it comes to large corporations that have a lot of international focus. They have a lot of international employment requirements. This is great knowledge to take into the private sector. So think about that. Anybody who wants to continue on with any law services, maybe you're a paralegal and you want to expand into immigration and citizenship law. This is a great program for you. HR professionals, anybody who's going to be managing employment and labor relations or recruitment and selection who need to know about immigration law or the requirements for visa applications, things along those lines. This is going to be a fantastic program for you. The final point I want to make is that this program is a really great precursor to support anybody who's interested in law school. Obviously, it's not so much on the admission side of it. There's a very big contingent or a very, very big focus when it comes to the LSAT and all of your previous requirements. But study in our program is going to be extremely rigorous. It's going to give you that glimpse into what a law school program would look like. So this is going to be a really great support for that kind of first year perspective into law school. So anybody who's thinking, I want to eventually become an immigration lawyer, obviously the GDIP ICL is not a law program to get you to lawyer status, but it is kind of that good precursor if you're thinking about getting into law school in the future. So while that's a lot of good information about the program as is, let's start thinking about the application process. The next several slides are going to give you kind of the key steps to begin your journey into thinking about applying for the GDIP ICL program for this coming January. The first step here is for you to do your research. This is your prime opportunity to learn more about our program. Take the time now and even into the application cycle to really understand the requirements before you commit your efforts, your time, and your money to applying for the program. Some of the things that we really encourage you to do is to review our program website entirely. And I can't stress it enough, read everything that you see. I'll be sending you the link at the end of this session. So definitely take a look at what's available on our website, review everything. You're attending this event. Fantastic. Thank you. You are already educating yourself on the program, but you can attend future events as well. I'll be hosting another one of these pre-application sessions on May 31st. And then throughout the month of June, I'll be offering a few more sessions, also into July, about the admissions process. Ask questions. Of course, we're going to open up the Q&A soon, not yet. But if you have any further questions that haven't been answered by the things that you've read or the things that you've heard, go ahead and email us. We want to be able to support you throughout the process. Again, it's really important that you know what's happening with the admissions process before you commit your money to the application itself. We want to make sure that every application that is paid for is correct, has all the documentation required, understands the process, and that we're able to review it successfully. The other thing that we want you to do is to look inward. Think about yourself and understand yourself in relation to the program. You'll take the information, the next few slides here, to really start asking yourself some serious questions. We have a self-assessment available on our website. You should take that as well to understand the learning styles, the requirements, thinking about the program and yourself, and ask yourself real questions about your future in this program. Don't let kind of the bright, rosy picture of what you want to kind of get yourself distracted by the realities of the application process. It's a fantastic program. We love what we're putting out there, and we really do respect everybody who comes through and applies, becomes a student, and graduates. And it's a huge, ambitious goal for a lot of individuals, and we applaud that. But you should be asking yourself the serious questions now in order to make sure that you understand if you're right for not only just a January application cycle, but a future September one, or even a future application cycle, 2024, 2025, or beyond. So take the time, do your readings, review everything, and then think about yourself in this program. Here's some of the things that you can really think about or ask yourself when it comes to, am I right for this program? The first one is, are you currently enrolled in another post-secondary program? You can't be enrolled in multiple programs at once. It would never be encouraged given the rigors of the GDIP ICL program. So anybody who's currently in a post-secondary program, you need to make sure that you'll be completing it by September. We have a mandatory document requirement. We need to see final transcripts from any of your post-secondary programs that are in progress by September 1st. So you need to make sure that you're going to be completing. You can commit to submitting final documents, and we'll be able to review them for the admissions process. So if you're going to be going into a program that's going to finish up maybe October or November of this year, you're not going to be thinking about a January application. We're not going to be able to accommodate you in the admissions process. You'll have to think about a fall 2024 application to begin in September of next year. And that application will open hopefully later this year or maybe early into 2024. Watch our website for more information about that cycle. Another question you can ask yourself is, can you commit the time and effort necessary to be successful in the GDIP ICL? This is a program that requires extreme commitment by all of our students, and especially for those who are interested in beginning in January, because as I've mentioned, we only accept full-time applications for our January intakes. And that means individuals who are employed full-time won't be able to take our program full-time. There is a specific requirement or policy designed by the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs that restricts individuals from being full-time employed and in school full-time. So you might have to consider your professional situation, you might have to change some things, or again, you might have to consider a future application for a fall intake to apply part-time. Again, really think about that. We are really stringent about that requirement. We don't want anybody to be occupying both full-time study and full-time employment. So really think about what you can do in that regard. Again, you also need to understand yourself as an individual who must be able to moderate their own studies and do things on their own time. You'll be given a lot of requirements, a lot of readings, a lot of things to be doing outside of a classroom setting. So you need to be prepared to moderate your time, not to have too many commitments that will take you away from it. If you have a lot of travel coming up, maybe this isn't the opportunity or the time for you. You need to be able to commit yourself to your studies as much as you can to be successful in this program. The final question here is pretty simple. Because we're an online program, you need to understand what your internet connection is. There are online tutorials, as I've already mentioned, and that's going to require you to be off camera, off mic, and being seen and heard by your fellow classmates and your instructors. So think about your technology capabilities in preparation for your application and your prospective entry into the program. One of the big questions that you should be asking yourself is, do I meet the admission requirements? We will go through the admission requirements here in a little bit. Of course, our website has a ton detailed, but you should be talking to yourself about this now. Do you have an undergraduate degree? Have you studied at the undergraduate level and completed a bachelor's? If you haven't, do you have any studies at the university undergraduate level? Do you have to gather up your transcripts at this point? Do you have things available, or maybe you have some of them? Do you need to prepare to take an English language proficiency test? That's a huge one. There's a lot of people who think that they are exempt or think that they deserve an exemption. That's not easily come by. It's not something we offer, period. There are a few exemption requirements that we offer with our program, but you need to be aware of, if you need to submit an English language proficiency test, that you should be prepping for that now, especially if you think that there's a weakness in your English language proficiency. Specifically, we see a lot of individuals struggle on writing scores. Start work on that now. Start thinking about those requirements now. Do you need to find appropriate references? Do you have references that are up to date? Do you have people who are willing to submit documents on your behalf? Are they people in a leadership position? Also, do you need to write an up-to-date resume or CV for the access pathway? Things you should be thinking about now and asking yourself now. Final question you should be thinking about is, what if this program isn't right for me? So you've mapped it out. You've realized that this isn't the right program for you at this time. What should you be doing to prepare for maybe a future intake? Plan. Make sure you are prepared for a future application as necessary. Think about your undergraduate studies. If you need to do any returning studies, if you haven't completed any undergraduate studies, you only have maybe a diploma program or a certificate. Those studies aren't going to be enough to bring you into the admissions process. We're a graduate level program at a pretty prestigious Canadian university. Undergraduate studies are going to be a requirement. You need to consider that. If you don't have anything now, you should start thinking about maybe a future application for our program, but thinking about undergraduate studies now. Think about a bachelor's, think about some continuing studies, think about some upgrading if maybe you didn't have the greatest GPA in your previous studies. Think about your professional experience as well. As I'm going to outline in the next slide about the access pathway, you need some relevant professional experience if you don't meet the academic requirements. So maybe you have to look at some employment opportunities or some volunteering options available to you. Specifically, working on your references is going to be key. It's the number one thing that we see a lot of applications fail on is references just don't provide documents on the applicant's behalf. We'll detail more about what the reference requirements are, but start thinking about those people and start planning that out potentially for the future. Also, as I've already mentioned, studying for that English language proficiency test. We don't want people to go into this and have to panic and get an ELPT score late into the admissions process. That never does anything good for anybody. And myself, I've taken an ELPT. I know how stressful that process is. We want you to prepare accordingly. So think about what you need to do to build up your acumen to get to the stage where you're willing to apply or ready to apply for our program. And perhaps it's not January 2024. If it is, fantastic. We'd look forward to your application. But if it's not, we'll have future intakes. We absolutely will. We'll have this program for a good long time. You can think about a future intake. Also, you should think about maybe the certificate in law program. We have a really lovely certificate program here with Queens, and it's going to provide a really good perspective of studying at the undergraduate level. It is an undergraduate program, and it will give you sort of that sense, that taste of how studies are done at Queens. So think about that program. Take a look at their website, certificate.queenslaw.ca. There's a lot of great resources that you can take a look at there to prep you for maybe a future application for the program. But for everyone else, if this program is right for you now for this application cycle, let's take a look at some of the different options that you can take advantage of when it comes to your application. The first thing you should take a look at is the access pathway. This is a pathway only for those who don't meet the academic admission requirements. Access is not utilized for people who cannot get the English language proficiency test scores, who can't acquire the right references, and who can't provide a resume or CV. This is only for individuals who have completed a bachelor's degree, but don't have the B average required. Maybe you've completed some university studies, but you didn't finish it entirely. Maybe you've gone to a college program after you conducted some university studies. If you've completed a paralegal program at a college, and that's all the studies you have. And again, that B average is really key on your university studies. To receive admission consideration under the access pathway, if you meet any of those academic admission requirements, you're going to have to provide a resume and CV for the admissions process, and it has to highlight a minimum of 5 years worth of relevant professional experience. Relevant professional experience means experience in immigration and citizenship law in general. There's very few things that kind of look related but are directly related to what we're assessing. Again, that's why I got you to think about yourself and your volunteer or professional experience. And our admission committee will review those individuals who have some university study, maybe have some college study as well, who have that 5 years of professional experience and submit their resume. So that's a pathway that you should look into if you don't meet our academic admission requirements. More information is available on our website. Really take a look at the requirements there. Again, that resume, that professional experience is really key here in this pathway. Making sure that you're applying correctly is really important when it comes to the access pathway as well. There are two places where you need to indicate if you're interested in applying via the access pathway. The first one is indicating yes under special circumstances on the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs application system. That then gives you a box to explain to us why you need to apply via the access pathway. So again, it's a paragraph where you can tell us what circumstances you experienced during your undergraduate, which maybe didn't allow you to complete it or complete it without the B average. Also in question 1, under graduate program questions, you have to indicate, yes, I am applying via the access pathway. And again, making sure that you have that resume or CV updated and ready to go. Don't utilize an old or outdated resume. Make sure it's up to date. There are great resume templates available via our career services website here at Queens. And also make sure you outline your key job duties that relate to the GDIP ICL program. All resumes are submitted via email. It's not done via the application. You email it directly to us at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca. All applications are going to have the same 2 document requirements. It's transcripts from all previous post-secondary studies and references. Some will have to submit resumes or CVs, depending if you're applying via the access pathway or not. And some of you are going to have to submit English language proficiency test scores. More on that a little bit later. Let's specifically take a look at references or transcripts, though. So you need to submit all post-secondary transcripts, undergraduate, graduate, college, SAGEP, letter of permission, study abroad, exchange programs, anything that you have done at the postgraduate level, you should be identifying and including with your application. The School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs Office does not accept WES or ECS, any third-party assessment in place of official transcripts. So make sure that you are submitting documents that look somewhat similar to this. This is a dummy mock-up here of an example of a transcript that we accept. The key is that it labels any transcript or mark sheet is labeled as official, has some sort of seal or insignia from your institution. It has a signature ideally, but the key is that it outlines the courses you've taken, the grades you receive, and the credits associated with each course. The item on the right-hand side is just the reverse side of this transcript. If there is information on the reverse side of your transcript, include that as well. It helps us understand your grading scheme at your institution for our assessment. The other thing you should be including is your degree or diploma certificates, just highlighting the program you took, that somebody signed off on it, and what the credential is that you received. Again, the tips to take away from this are that you have all of your transcripts available, everything, as I've mentioned, undergraduate, graduate, diploma studies, SAGIP, domestic and international, letters of permission, exchange programs. If your transcript highlights that you received transfer credit, make sure you include the original documents that you received those transfer credit from. If they're incomplete programs, say you started off at the University of Toronto, but then you moved to Vancouver, so you finished up your studies at UBC, we need to see the University of Toronto and the UBC transcripts. Maybe you started at Punjabi University and you've transferred over to the University of Lagos, and then you came to York University. We need to see all three of those transcripts because your journey in your undergraduate, your graduate, any of your postgraduate studies is really important for us to understand the application. So send everything and make sure you don't just send graduate level studies. We don't just want to see your master's or PhD. We want to see your undergraduate. That's the primary basis of admission, but we want to see everything. And again, if there's a transcript legend on the reverse side of your transcript or an additional page, include that as well. If there's nothing on the reverse side of your transcript, you don't have to scan that. If you have any physical copies of your transcripts that in your possession right now, go ahead and get good scans of them. Make sure they're legible. They're not blurry. They're not grayed out because of coloring. But it's really important for you to get good scans of those now. Do it in black and white to save on the file size so you can upload it with your application. If you can acquire PDF copies of your transcripts directly from your post-secondary institutions, get all of those as well. That would be really helpful for the application process. If you don't have either of those, or if your school doesn't submit PDF documents, if you only can get physical copies of your transcripts, if they're difficult to get, start working on that now. The deadline for documents is September 1st for a January 2024 application, so start work on that right away. Let's talk briefly about English language proficiency test scores. So all applicants need to provide an ELPT score for their application process, unless they meet our exemption requirements. The number one exemption requirement here is that you self-identify as a native English speaker. So this is a really tricky term to define. We ask people to really consider if you've been speaking English as your primary language since childhood, you haven't taken any English as a second language courses, the English is the primary language or the official language of your home country or one of the official languages of your home country. English is the primary language in your personal and professional settings. And what we really want you to do is be honest about this. Think about if English is something you would list as your primary or your native language. Throughout the process, our admission committee could review your application and request an ELPT score anyway. So be prepared to write that, but you should be well ahead of the game in understanding if you need to provide it or not upfront. If you do not self-identify as a native English speaker, you must submit an ELPT score unless you meet the next exemption. The next exemption is that you have attended full-time studies at an accredited university within 12 months of your application in which the education was provided in English. So there are some key things there that you need to note. This is university studies. College programs do not count. This also doesn't count for other English for academic purposes courses. We need to see that your studies were done at the university level, that they are full-time and are done in English. So the easiest way is to make sure that there's a letter included from your previous post-secondary highlighting your level of study, full-time or part-time, and that the language of delivery was English. So if you don't meet this exemption, you have to submit an ELPT score. So that means if you don't self-identify as a native English speaker and you haven't completed university studies full-time in English within 12 months of your application, you have to submit an ELPT for the admissions process. There is a third exemption, but unfortunately, it does not apply for winter applicants or January applicants. That is the English for Academic Purposes ESLA 150 program with the Queens School of English. This is not available as an exemption for January applications. It is something only available for fall applications. So the only exemptions applicable for the upcoming admission cycle is that you self-identify as a native English speaker, and or you've attended 12 months of university study full-time in English within 12 months of your application. For those of you who have to submit an ELPT, and there will be a lot of applicants who have to submit an ELPT score, we accept CALE CE or the computer edition, IELTS academic, TOEFL IBT, and TOEFL PBT. We accept both the home editions of that, so if you're doing it online, or if you're at a testing center. You must meet our required scores. There are no exceptions to that. We know that a lot of people, as I've mentioned prior, have struggles when it comes to certain components of each test. We see a lot of the writing scores being under the required 7.0 on an IELTS academic test. We don't make considerations or accommodations for individuals who cannot meet those specific test scores. We know that IELTS now is introducing a kind of an abridged test to focus on one of your areas that you need to improve up to a required score. So I would recommend really investing your time into reviewing what's available to you and selecting the right test for you. But we will not take a look at applications that do not have the required test score. We also will not take a look at any of those unacceptable test centers that are listed in the box on the right. No IELTS General, no Duolingo, no Pearson, no CLB, any of those other ones as well. We also will not take a look at any exemption requests. If you don't meet our exemptions, don't request an additional exemption because we don't take those into consideration. We don't look at citizenship, we don't look at professional experience, geographical location, or any other reason why you feel you would be exempt. You need to be open and honest about whether you meet our exemptions, if you self-identify as a native English speaker, or if you've met that exemption for education. Do not include exemption requests because you studied at the college level or a private college or any other institution that's not a university. We really want you to be honest about this and provide an ELPT if you have to. It's why we're telling you to prepare now for the future. We really want you to make sure that you're submitting your tests by the document deadline as well. September 1st is the deadline, hence why I'm telling you to prepare. We don't provide extensions when it comes to this. We ask people to meet our document requirements. It is the discretion of the admission committee if anything comes in late. And again, as I've already mentioned, any of the home-based tests, so if you're doing CALE or IELTS from home, like online, and you're being proctored or monitored by an IELTS test proctor, those are fine. We accept those. If you have to go into a test center to do your test as well, that's fine too. So you can provide either of those options. Let's talk briefly about references. As I've mentioned, references are a really key area that people need to think about when it comes to the application process. All applications must submit 2 references. They will be either 2 professional references or 1 professional reference and 1 academic reference. The majority of people are going to be providing 2 professional references. Those should be individuals at the management position or management level, managers, supervisors, anybody who's kind of a direct report up to can be a really good professional reference. People who have known you, who understand your work, that would be really key when it comes to a professional reference. If you've been at a post-secondary institution within the last 5 years, and that does include college or other post-secondary institutions outside of just being university, You can utilize one academic reference. That should be an instructor, a professor, tutorial assistant, anybody who has kind of led or been in a position of leadership at the academic level. You can utilize those for your professional, or for in place of one of your professional references. You should also be able to provide one additional professional reference paired with your academic reference. So everybody provides two, either two professional or one academic and one professional. As I've already mentioned, they should be people in positions of leadership, managers, supervisors, professors, etc. They should not be family members, friends, coworkers, classmates, anybody who just isn't connected to you in a position of leadership way. And one of the things we really do tell you at this point is to talk to your references and make sure they are comfortable providing documents on your behalf. Nothing reference-wise comes directly from the applicant. You enter in the reference contact information, their email address and their name in your application, and they are emailed documents to fill out on your behalf once you submit and pay for your application. So talk to your references ahead of time, prepare them for this process, and make sure they're comfortable providing things on your behalf. Again, don't submit an application with friends, family, colleagues, or coworkers providing references. We will ask you to provide new ones. If you don't have managers or supervisors who are able to be references, maybe you've been self-employed for some time, you've been retired for a while, you need to contact us at our immigration diploma at queensu.ca email address so that we can better understand your request and you can provide the appropriate two references for your application. If you are utilizing an academic reference, make sure it's a recent academic reference. Again, you can only use an academic reference if you've been at a post-secondary institution within 5 years. But if you have that option to provide an academic reference, try not to make it somebody who's 10, 15, 20 years, maybe who doesn't quite remember you. Try to bring somebody more recent. And again, talk to your reference about the program, talk about what you're looking in for a reference by them, and make sure that they are comfortable providing documents on your behalf. Also, make sure they're going to fill out the form appropriately. A reference needs to be able to fill out information and actually expand upon their rationales to why they've selected certain categories for you. If they're just going to provide kind of a click through and no written information, it's probably not the best reference for you. Find somebody who's going to be able to provide documents on your behalf. The final step here is to think about the application itself. There are two personal statement of interest questions that we ask you to write in the application. We want you to keep it to a maximum of 200 words for each response. And these are the questions we ask you. In your own words, please explain what is motivating you to apply for the GDIP ICL program. And second, in your own words, please explain how the GDIP ICL program will advance your career objectives and future goals. Some of the key tips here is that make sure you're writing the statements yourself. Again, we don't want you to have any support from friends or family or organizations who are willing to write things on your behalf. Should be coming from you. This is your opportunity to tell us about you. It's kind of the only point in the application in which you get to kind of talk about yourself. We also don't want you to use any AI writing samples to provide your written responses. We have ways of detecting that. We have detected it. We don't want to detect it in the future. So write it in your own voice and use the space wisely. You don't have to waste precious words complimenting our program. We love Queens. We are happy to be employed by Queens. You don't have to tell us how good you think Queens is. Save your words to talk about yourself. Answer the questions properly as well. When the second question says, please explain how the GDIP ICL program will advance your career objectives, tell us what your career objectives are and what that future plan is. Don't tell us more about the learning or more about the way the classroom is set up. That's not what that question is asking you. The first question is your motivation. Why do you want to be in this program? The second is, what are you going to do with this program, the education, once you graduate from the program? Answer it correctly. Short statements also won't help you. 1 or 2 sentences are not going to be of value. Really expand and utilize the word count, but stay within the word count. 200, 300 word limit maximum. Remember, the key thing you should know here is that the application should not be the first time when you are putting pen to paper to write down your responses to those 2 questions. Take the time to write them out beforehand. Review them, step away from them, and come back to them. See if it still makes sense to you. Make sure that your spelling and grammar are great within those statements. Again, within your own voice, no support whatsoever. So think about what you're going to write it out. Then when you get to the application, that's when you start to hone and define a little bit more before you submit. Speaking of submitting, when you are ready, when you have your documents ready to go, when you have your transcripts ready for uploading, your references are all prepared, that's when you apply for the program. You click that submit button, you pay your $110 because it is non-refundable. You've gone through this process, you understand the application, and you're prepared. Review everything, make sure you review it again, and make sure you're ready to submit those additional documents outside of the application, your ELPT scores and your resume via email. This is the location where you go to submit. Also, this is the location where you should be checking in on your application throughout the admissions process. You will be able to see if documents are received or if they're acceptable or not by logging in on a consistent basis. I encourage all of our applicants to log in on a weekly basis at least, and to make sure you're talking to your references that they've submitted documents on your behalf. If the SGSPA office deems that your documents are unacceptable for the admissions process, you will need to have official documents submitted on your behalf, and more information can be provided by their office as to how to support you. That is a lot of information that hopefully you have taken in, that it answers a lot of the questions that you may have. We are going to go ahead and open up the Q&A now. Again, remember, no need to raise your hand. We're not asking anybody to unmute. We are asking you to not spam the Q&A box with your with multiple questions or multiple of the same question. We're asking you, if you want, you can upvote questions by clicking the thumbs up and liking a question. If we see that there's something consistently coming up, we will answer that verbally here. And just be polite, be courteous. There's a lot of people here today. We're going to get a lot of information in the chats or in the Q&A box. I've got some slides here that will rotate through that has some additional information for you. Again, our website is going to be really key. Do your research, ask us questions afterwards if you still have some questions about certain things. We're going to go ahead and get to as many questions as we can. We will probably close at a certain point so that we can catch up. But we appreciate your attendance if you have to cut away at this point. But we're going to stick around for as long as we can to answer as many questions as possible. Let's see. One of the questions that I should answer up front. Yes, somebody's asking about older English language proficiency test scores. You can utilize them up to 2 years from the month of your application. So for example, if our application opens on June 1st, which it will, you can use test scores from June 2021 and upward. Anything beyond June 2021, May, April, those are not going to be acceptable. Somebody's asking about seats and availability. We don't provide that information out. What we do instruct is that our winter intake is smaller than our fall intake. It's why we restrict it to the full-time studies only for January. If you don't get an offer of admission, if you've applied, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't qualify for the program. We receive a lot of qualified applicants. Not everybody is going to receive an offer of admission. That's just the nature of admissions. We only have a set number of openings within each of our intakes. You're welcome to apply again for a future intake. For fall 2024, that application will open sometime soon. Later this year or early next year, that will have a bigger intake. A bigger number of people will be entering into those studies. So think about applying in the future. If you've applied multiple times in the past, you haven't gotten in, you should consider what options are available to you when it comes to kind of the things you should be thinking about. Maybe your GPA isn't enough. Maybe you need to work on your professional experience, your ELPT scores. Really keep in mind what our requirements are. Our course is not covered by OSAP, unfortunately. It is something we would love to have for our program, but unfortunately, this is not one of those that is available. So for those not in Ontario, OSAP is kind of the Ontario Student Assistance Program. Because of an agreement between the provinces, because we don't qualify for Ontario provincial funding, it means that other provincial funding opportunities are also not available. You can always apply, try it, but there's no real provincial opportunities for financial assistance to study in our program. Five years of experience is mandatory for that access pathway. So if you're looking at your professional experience, you've only got 1, 2, 3 years at this point, you're going to be thinking about a future application, maybe not quite this one, especially if you're limited in the other requirements. If you don't have any undergraduate studies, you're not going to be looking at a successful application. And we don't want you to waste that application fee. Take that time and energy to devote yourself to thinking about what you need to do to ensure that you are available to apply and be successful moving forward. Think about your professional responsibilities, your volunteer opportunities, any of your studies. Maybe there's an online undergraduate program you should be considering taking. There's lots of things to be thinking about when it comes to the admissions process for the program and meeting the requirements. We're extremely competitive. We have a ton of applications every single intake. It's very difficult to get admissions into our program or to any program really these days because we are a global program. We are able to take international individuals because there's no on-campus requirement. So really think about those requirements and take a look at what the parameters are and how you meet them. We welcome all different types of undergraduate requirements. There's no real restrictions there. The real restrictions come when it comes to individuals with the professional experience requirements, because then that is relevant professional experience. Immigration and citizenship work, law work, primarily is what we're looking at. Again, so I've just saw a question about no relevant experience, no undergraduate studies. That's going to be a very difficult application. It's not going to work, to be completely honest. You need to have some level of university study at the undergraduate level. Even if you've completed a diploma program, make sure that you have some sort of university studies. So you might want to look at some of the options for online studies. We know Athabasca University is a great online institution. There's lots of great online institutions because of the pandemic. They have gone online. And again, professional studies, it needs to be that minimum 5 years worth. So you're looking at a future application. The application fee is $110, just to keep that in mind. I'm going to go back here to the beginning of my rotating slides so that you can catch them again. And somebody's asking about September 2024 applications. Not sure the exact date yet. Monitor our website for more information there. So for anybody who has a transcript from a non-English institution, you will need to have a translation done of that transcript and delivered to the SGSPA office. I'm going to provide a link here in the chat. I'm going to send that out now to show you the site you should be visiting to review the requirements for official documents. The SGSPA office, so School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, they are the office that is the first point of contact when it comes to documents. They have a drop-down menu on the website I've just provided. It says Step 2, Compile Documentation. Take a look at the requirements there. Translators, official licensed translators can provide your transcripts directly to them. They also have some parameters around notarized copies of transcripts. You should talk to their office first about any requirements for notarized copies of transcripts that you possess. All right, I'm going to go to the top of the screen here and see what questions are What do you constitute as a full-time worker for someone applying? So full-time employment, I believe, is defined as being more than 12 hours of employment per week. So it's a pretty limited definition. There is a specific clause within the SGSPA policies when it comes to full-time and full-time employment and studies. So just make sure that you are really cautious with that, and that you kind of go onto the part-time component or take a leave from work when it comes to potential studies for our program. I'm going to pause the questions right now. We want to try and catch up as best as we can. So we will reopen if we have the opportunity. Let's see. Will it be necessary to send the transcripts directly to Queen's University even after uploading the official copy? So all of our students, when they gain an offer of admission and accept that offer, then do have to meet the official document requirement by the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office. So you will have to have official transcripts sent on your behalf by the post-secondary institution. If they have already done that through the admissions process, then you don't have to do it again. If they haven't, so if you just uploaded your own copies of your transcripts in PDF format for the admissions process, you will then have to get them to either email, fax, or physically mail copies of transcripts directly to their office. They do have a fax number. Fax is still used by a lot of institutions. Primarily, it's going to be email or physical mail, but you will have to have that submitted on your behalf. I think I've just answered that question as well. Can I submit my transcript myself? So yes, you can submit your own copies of transcripts. Ideally, it's in English PDF format and scanned for your application. With the application process, there is an upload feature at the end of the application. You've identified all of your post-secondary institutions. Ideally, what you should be doing is separating your documents per institution. Don't lump them all together and submit it 4 times, because then we get 4 copies of all of your documents. Create an undergraduate file, a graduate file, a diploma or college file, or an other file. Whatever you've listed, include those there in the upload process. Again, as I've mentioned, if you receive an offer of admission, then you have to have official copies of your transcripts sent on your behalf by your school. B- is not a B grade. B- is a separate grade point and grade percentage than a B average. A B average on the Queen's scale is a 3.0 on a 4.3. Believe that's roughly a 2.8 on a 4.0 scale. We have methods of doing our own assessments. So we take all of the transcripts and assess them against the Queen's scale, but a B- average will not count. It has to be a B. So that's why the access pathway exists. It's for individuals who don't quite meet our admission criteria, the academic side of it, only the B average and the completed university studies. Somebody's asking about the different scores for our ELPTs. This is a perfect opportunity. They're up on the screen now. KLCE, you need to have an overall score of 70 with no category below 70. For IELTS Academic, it's an overall score of 7.0 with no category below 7.0. For TOEFL IBT, it is an overall score of 101 with no category basically below 26, I believe, or 25. I believe one score has to be 26. The other scores can be 25 out of 30. For TOEFL PBT, it's an overall score of 607. No specific category scores for that test. They need to be met. We will not take ELPT scores that do not meet those individual and overall score requirements. So if you have a score and you've got 9s and everything, except that writing score is a 6.5, need to work on that writing score. Start working on it now. Be aware of that requirement. Acceptance rate for the program, we don't provide. It's very competitive. That's all we say. Let's see. Somebody's asking in regards to study abroad and in English. It's going to be very tricky. You need to really take into consideration all of the different factors when it comes to English language, both personal and professional use from childhood. What do you use currently? What is your primary method of communication? What is the language of choice when it comes to what you studied in? If you think that you are going to self-identify as a native English speaker, that's fine. Just note that anybody who self-identifies as a native English speaker may be requested to provide an ELPT score if the admission committee deems it appropriate. So you should start thinking about it. If you're second guessing, start thinking about those ELPT scores, because you never know if you'll be requested for that. Let's see. So somebody's asking about a college program meeting the exemption requirement. I've already mentioned it. It is not applicable. It has to be at the university level. Accredited universities are very specific. They're a distinct class of institution. College programs do not count. So CDI, college, Seneca, Herzig, lots of different ones across Canada. Internationally, they have to be able to issue bachelor's degrees, and they are at that university level. Somebody's asking about a 3-year undergraduate degree. So long as the degree is completed, that's completely fine. We know that there are people who do 3 or 4-year degrees. Some people take longer to complete their undergraduate. That's fine as well. But yes, you can utilize any of those credentials to qualify for admissions for our program. I'm not going to be taking any comments or questions about references, specific references here in the Q&A. This is not the appropriate time to be asking about your unique circumstance when it comes to your references. You should be emailing our program, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca, for further information about your references. We know that there are individuals who may not be able to acquire professional references, either because they are self-employed, retirement, maybe there are issues with management. We can specifically discuss your reference options. As of right now, I mean, we are very much looking at our fall 2023 emails first. We will get to emails. We try to get to emails within a 3 to 5 business day time frame, so that we can answer your questions appropriately. But this is not going to be the opportunity for us to really get into details about your specific questions. So I apologize, I can't answer any questions at that point. I'm being more kind of general right now. All right, I'm going to go back to the slides. We're still going to stick around. I think we've got a few more. We can stick around for a little bit more and try to answer a few more questions. Fee payments. So somebody's asking about tuition fees, I presume. So our overall tuition for the program is $14,592, give or take a few pennies, even though they don't exist anymore in Canada. You can break up your tuition payment into terms. So you're only going to be paying for what you're enrolled in. So for our fall students coming in, you'll be, or I guess we'll say for winter, because that's a lot easier. Only full-time students are coming in. You'll pay for 3 courses up front: ICL 810, 820, 830. So that's roughly about $5,200 in tuition at that point. You can then request assistance through the Queen's tuition payment plan, which will then further break down that tuition amount, so the $5,200, into 4 equal installments across the 4 months of the term. So there is assistance there to break that number down. For anybody who's seeking financial assistance, as I've already mentioned, we're not OSAP eligible, but we do have an agreement with RBC for a line of credit. There's a lot of great information available on our website, our tuition and financing webpage specifically about that agreement. And you can start reaching out to them now and looking at that option for support moving forward. Somebody's asking about references. If they've completed their post-secondary within 5 years, you can still provide 2 professional references. That's fine. The only option is those who haven't completed within 5 years, they can't provide academic references. It should be 2 professional at that point. But anybody else, if you feel more comfortable with 2 professional references, even though you've been at a post-secondary institution within 5 years, that's completely fine. Whatever's going to be the best references that meet our requirements. Family members who work at or who supervise you at the business that you work at, that is going to be extremely difficult to utilize that reference. There's a potential inherent bias when it comes to family members utilized as references. So you should contact our office and we can better define what your references would best be for any future application. Our program doesn't require any specific work permits or any requirements there. We don't require our students to have work permits. We're not eligible for work permits. We're not eligible for PGWP. So there's no restrictions there when it comes to the application process. Again, in regards to full-time employment, it is a policy within the university sector. Specifically with Queens University, our School of Graduate Studies highlights that you cannot be employed full-time and studying full-time. It is not our requirement. That is the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. We adhere to it because we find it extremely important. We've gone through this now for quite a few terms. We understand the commitment that must be made by students with this program. It is a lot. Our program is not something that should be taken lightly, and the expectation that some of our students have had in the past that they can maintain full-time employment and full-time studies has not worked out well. We have had many people withdraw because the requirement's just too much. It lightens up in our program after the first course, which is great, after that first 6-week intensive course. But it's still a lot of study, and it's a policy. So on both of those fronts, that's why we don't look at full-time employment and full-time studies being acceptable for winters, even for winter and fall. But winter, we only look at those full-time applications. That's just how our program is structured for winter intake. All right, let's see if there's any additional questions. We don't provide individual feedback on past applications. We just don't. We ask all of those individuals to take a look at their application, what they submitted against the admissions process. The reality is, as I've mentioned already, we will receive a lot of great candidates who won't receive offers of admission because we have limited space in all of our programs. That's just the circumstance. If there was a reason why you didn't meet any of our admission requirements, maybe you submitted an ELPT score and one of those scores was a 6.5 rather than a 7, or a 60 at a 7 or rather than 70. I mean, that could be a clear indication as to why your application didn't progress forward. If you don't have that B average, if there was a reason for an error in a reference, there's lots of reasons why your application may not have gone through. We can't provide individual feedback. Review your application against our admission criteria, and just know that it's a very competitive program. There's not much we can do aside from just say that you can apply again. You're welcome to. But if there's something that's holding your application back that you can identify within the admissions process or the admissions criteria that you're not quite meeting, obviously work on that. And yeah, we would be happy to see your application again. Somebody's asking in regards to outside Canada studies. We don't take something like ICES in regards to, we don't take WES, we don't take any of those third-party assessors. If it's going to take time to acquire transcripts, you should start acquiring those transcripts now, especially if you're thinking about this even for a future intake. That's the requirement. We need to see your transcripts. We need to see the courses you took and the grades you received, and you should be able to provide your degree or diploma certificates to make sure that we know that you completed the program. Or if you didn't, there should be some indication from that institution that states what your medium of, what your language of education was, were you full-time or part-time, and if you completed the program or not. Start work on that now, and contact those institutions. Perhaps they can email the transcripts on your behalf directly to SGSPA once you have an application reference number. There's nothing else we can really provide. That is the requirement of the program. We have to see all of your transcripts for the assessment process. What is the minimum overall score from undergrad program? Yeah, B score, I've already answered that. So the B average is what's necessary from your undergraduate. Of course, we do take a look at your other studies in addition to the primary basis of admission, which is the undergraduate study. Yep, I've already mentioned in regards to people who can utilize an academic reference. You don't have to. That is completely fine. I know myself. I would utilize me in this example. When I completed my undergraduate program, I don't think I would have a really good academic reference. I was a head down, focus in on my studies, and just kind of complete the program. I didn't have really rich interactions with professors or TAs. I was really diligent about just focusing on my readings and studies. So I wouldn't have an academic reference. I would provide 2 professional references. International references are acceptable as well. We're completely fine with that. We welcome wherever you were employed. So long as you have a really good reference, we can utilize that. Somebody's asking about documents that are provided, or that references provide. Oh, okay, that's great. So anybody who is going to be a reference for you, they're going to receive an email from the SGSPA office. They will have to list out their relationship to you, how long they've known you, their name, their contact information, and then they'll answer some general questions about your professionalism, your workplace professionalism, your school professionalism, your communication abilities, initiative, things along those. Kind of your standard professional reference as if you were being asked about a job. So they will receive a form to fill out, and they email that back to the SGSPA office. If they have a letter of reference, they can upload it with that document. So you don't submit anything. If they've provided you a letter of reference, nothing comes from the applicant. It all comes from the referee. So just make sure that they're prepared to fill out documents on your behalf. They're willing to write out some explanations. We don't just want to see blank reference forms, just kind of I did my due diligence and here it is. Find references that are going to provide really good references for you. It's an important component of the application process. There's a lot of questions. We're going to stick around for another 4 minutes. I'm going to go back to the beginning here and just get those going again. Let's see. Yeah, I think I've already answered that question about if professors don't remember you. That's completely understandable. It happens. We want your references to be able to reference you. So with the Queens program, you need to complete the courses with no lower than a B- average. So anybody who completes all the courses with a B- or higher, you graduate from the program and you'll be eligible to write the EPE. Let's see. So somebody's saying undergraduate school only issues student copies of transcripts while they send official copies to organizations alone. So yes, you can upload your own copy, and then that school can provide the copy of their transcripts on your behalf. Your copy won't be official. It'll be an unofficial copy because it's coming from you, only utilized for our admissions purposes. The official copy will then have to come from the school. So that's completely fine. Personal emails from references are fine, of course. They will have to identify themselves, and of course, we can review that for integrity purposes if necessary. But yeah, so long as they're willing to provide you with contact information, I don't think the email address should matter much. Completed master's from a Canadian university in September 2022. Will I have to still do IELTS if your master's study was full-time? 2022 September still fits within the window of exemption, so you may meet the exemption requirement, but again, it may be requested by the admission committee anyway. So prepare accordingly and just provide your documents and provide that letter from your institution indicating that you were full-time or part-time and that your studies were in English. What thing will help us to exempt from bachelor degree? There is no exemption from the bachelor's degree requirement aside from some university studies at the undergraduate level, and you apply via the access pathway with the 5 years minimum of professional experience. There is no guarantee for any of our applicants, of course. So obviously you want to have the most credentials that meet all of our admission requirements, but the access pathway is available. Having some university studies at the undergraduate level is going to be key, and especially having that minimum 5 years of relevant professional experience is also going to be key. We consider entrepreneurs. Anybody who's an entrepreneur who needs assistance in regards to their references, contact us and we'll talk to you about that. But entrepreneurs should also have some form of hopefully post-secondary study. You have your transcripts available. But yes, entrepreneurs are welcome to apply. The reference component will obviously be something we'll have to discuss further. All right, I'm going to put back in the chat some additional information for you against the previous links with some additional links here. We still have a lot of people with us today, so I want to make sure everybody gets as much information as possible. Somebody's asking again about full-time study and full-time employment. For our January applications, we're only accepting full-time applicants, so that is a hard no for full-time employment. You can indicate that you are going to take time off work during your studies and go back to it, or you're going to reduce down to part-time. But again, it's a very time-consuming, intensive program. Many students have tried and many students have had to withdraw because they just can't do it. It's why those policies are in place. We need you. We want you. We hope for you to be successful in our program. And that's the only way we're going to move forward with any January applications. Again, we've mentioned it many times. We understand that individuals think they feel, they know how they handle their full-time employment with study. It is a policy requirement by the university that full-time employment and full-time studies cannot be done at the same time. Yep, of course, we welcome in international transcripts. They have to be in English, though. Translated copies or translations associated with the original transcripts can be provided by the certified translator. You should be contacting the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs to confirm what is approved in regards to translations. The link I've put into the chat should help you, that queensu.ca/grad-postdoc. Visit that link to find more about the document requirement and translations. Oh, the professional experience component is only a requirement for the access pathway. We don't request resumes from anybody else who meets all of the admission requirements. The minimum 5 years of relevant professional experience is only a requirement for those who have to apply via access, who need to submit their resume because they don't have the bachelor's degree, they have some university studies, or maybe they have a bachelor's degree, but they didn't have the B average. All right, just a few more questions before we wrap up here. Let's see if there's anything else that we can help out on. Lots of questions. We're sorry we couldn't get to everybody today. We will be hosting another session on May 31st. Monitor our Facebook page, and watch your inbox if you signed up for our mailing list. You can find all the registration information there very soon. It'll be the same structure of the presentation, but we'll have different questions, so maybe some different answers that will assist you moving forward. Let's see. So again, I'm going to really reiterate this because it is probably the number one thing that we receive. It is that request for exemption from the English language proficiency test score. Our requirement is that your education is recent. It's within 12 months, and that's the requirement. Even if you've done a lot of previous study, but you still don't self-identify as a native English speaker, if your previous study was done a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, at this point, it's not an exemption from the ELPT requirement. So be aware that we know other institutions have different exemption requirements. Ours are as structured on our website. Visit our website for the exact wording. It's really important that you're aware of what the exemption is. Again, the ELPT, we understand it's not the easiest thing to go through. It's stressful. It has a cost associated with it, but We need you to be successful in our program. We need your English language proficiency to be as good as it can be. It meets our qualifications based on the scores that we've put out there from the approved test centers. It's the only way that you're going to be admitted if you need to provide it is by meeting those test scores. We don't approve of any additional exemption requests outside of what is already provided on our website. We don't take emails from people who want to try and make a case for their exemption, because we don't do that. We are very stringent on this requirement. There is no longer a requirement at the College of Immigration and Citizenship level. So anybody who's taking the EPE, you used to have to provide an ELPT at either the admission level for your education or at the college level. The college no longer requires it because we have a standard for admission. So because we're the only point, we're very stringent about our requirements. So just really keep that in mind. Final question. Somebody's asking about equal opportunity between access pathway and standard admission. Yep, everybody gets reviewed. Any application that we receive that's finalized, all the documents are submitted, and we're able to assess the full application, we'll have our eyes on their application. We put the commitment to make sure that everybody who provides the time and effort and monetary requirement when it comes to this application process gets an assessment from us. So it's equal across the board. Again, it's just a very competitive program, very few spaces for a lot of applications that we receive. It's a considerable number. So do what you can with whatever's provided on our website, what I've told you today. Hopefully this has really educated you on the admission requirement, what you're looking for, what we're looking for moving forward, that you can put things together. We appreciate everybody being a part of today's session. On the screen is our website, our Facebook page. Follow us, review the website. As mentioned before, read everything that you can about the program. Extremely important to just know what we ask for when it comes to the admission requirements. If you want to see me again, or if you want to hear from me again, May 31st will be our next session. Watch for an invite for that. And we'll also have sessions throughout the months of June and July. When it comes to actually, now we're in the admission cycle, you can apply. Here's some more information you should know, but it's going to be very similar information. Be prepared as best as you can. Have your things ready to go. Have your documents, your applications, your transcripts from all of your post-secondary ready to go. Again, we appreciate you being here today. Hopefully this has been informative. We look forward to seeing your application in the near future. And yes, thank you just very much for attending.